Welcome everyone to part 10 and the final part of this tutorial series where we're creating this Sci-Fi Mech robot in Blender. So this is the last part, and in this part we're going to be rendering the final image, and then we're also going to be animating a walk cycle, and then we'll render that out, and in Blender's video editor we will compile the frames together. And after this tutorial series, if you'd like to learn how to create some more robots in Blender, then I have two other robot tutorial series on my YouTube channel. So I have this tutorial here on how to create this sci-fi robot drone, and then I also have this tutorial here on how to create this sci-fi worker robot. Links in the description if you'd like to check out those tutorials after you finish this one. And if you've enjoyed this course and you'd like to give me a little tip, you can send me a super thanks here on YouTube underneath this video. And also, if you're a beginner to animation in Blender, then I also have an animation for beginners tutorial. I'll have a link in the description if you'd like to check out that tutorial on how to do animation in Blender for beginners. So I'm going to start off by just creating a simple background. So I'm going to press Shift C, that's going to center the 3D cursor. I can press Shift A, and I'm going to go right here and add a plane. And then I'm going to scale this plane way up so it's really big. And then I'm going to tab to go to edit mode, and I want to add some loop cuts here. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut. Let's click and drag over there, and then also Control R to add a loop cut, click, and I'm going to drag that over there. And then I'm going to click right here to go to the vertex select, and then I'm going to select this vertex, and then hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select these other vertices here, and also this one here. We're basically just making a very simple background. So I'm going to press E to extrude, bring it up on the Z-axis and just stick that there, and then I can press tab to go to object mode. So I can now press Control 2, and Control 2 is the shortcut key to add a subdivision surface modifier. You can see here is the subsurf right over here on the modifier properties, and so that's just going to smooth out the mesh and subdivide it. Let's also use the object context menu to shade this smooth, and then I can also scale this down a bit. So we now just have a very simple background for our robot. So now let's add a camera. So I'm going to zoom in here to the robot, and I also want to press G and Z, and I want to bring this background down so that the robot is just kind of sitting on the ground. So just bring that down on the Z axis until you can just barely see the feet going through there. All right, so I'm going to press Shift A, and to add a camera, let's go right down here, and we're going to add a camera. And then I want to place the camera right about here, so you can just navigate to where you want the camera to be, and then I can press Control Alt Numpad 0. And Control Alt Numpad 0 is going to hop the camera to where we are. And also here in the outliner, you can see we have a lights and camera collection. So I'm going to click and drop the camera in the lights and camera collection. And then we also have this plane right here, and I'm just going to rename this. So in the outliner, I can double click on it, and I'm just going to rename it to like ground. You don't need to rename it if you don't want to. I just want to organize my blend file very well. And then I'm going to click on the ground and drag and drop it into the lights and camera. And then I can click on the check mark to unhide that so we can see all the lights. So let's hold down the Z button, and I'm going to move my mouse up into the rendered view so we can preview this. All right, now there's a couple things I want to do. This background is very bright, and so it's very reflective, so it looks super bright and shiny. And then also I want to change where the camera is placed. First, let's change the background. So I'm going to click on the background and then click on the shading tab. Let's press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view. Hold down the Z button, go up into the rendered view, and then just make sure you have the background selected, and let's click on new here to add a new material in the shader editor. And I'm just going to rename this to background or ground, whatever you want to call this. All right, so now I'm just going to do a few things to the principled shader. So I want to take the base color and I want to make this fully black because I want it to be very dark and I want the robot to stand out. And then also I'm going to take the roughness value and turn that all the way up to 1 so that it is very rough. And then I also don't want it to be very reflective. I don't want to be able to see very many of the lights on the ground. So I'm going to turn down the specular value. And I'm going to turn the specular value down to just like maybe a 0.1 so it's very dark. That is pretty dark. Maybe just turn it up to like a 0.2, something like that. And then if you want to, you can select these lights and just kind of bring them up so that they're not sticking through the ground, because you can see they look very strong right there because they're touching the ground. So I can just kind of bring them up a little bit and just kind of rotate them over. And then also, I really don't care to see the grid. I just really don't need that. So I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel right here and then click on the overlays, and I can uncheck the floor and uncheck the X and uncheck the Y as well. And actually, let's press Ctrl S to save. We're going to go back to the layout here, and you can see the floor is back, the checkered floor there. So I want to hide it in the layout. So again, let's click right here on the drop down. I can uncheck the floor and the X and the Y. I just want to do that because I don't really care to see that. Alright, so now I'm going to select the camera just by clicking right up here, or you can just select the camera right here. And I want this to be a square image because that works well for this scene. So I'm going to click right up here to go to the output properties. Now you can change the resolution to whatever you want. I am going to be using a resolution of 2560 by 2560. So that's a very high quality image, and it's a nice square image. You could just change this though to like 1080 by 1080, or you could also just change the resolution to like 1920 by 1920. I want this to be a very large image, but just know that if the resolution is bigger, it's going to take longer to render. Of course, this is in Blender Eevee, so it should render pretty fast. Now I also want to change the focal length of the camera. So to do this, I'm going to click on the object data properties of the camera, and right here you can see there is a focal length. So if you turn the focal length way down, now if I like move the camera really close, you don't have to follow me with this, I just want to show you though, if I make the focal length really small, it's going to have kind of like a fisheye effect, kind of like with those GoPro cameras. But if you turn the focal length up really big, then it's going to make the camera look like it's a little bit farther away, and it's going to make everything look a little bit more flat. So I like a focal length value of 90. I think 90 looks pretty good. Now to move the camera in and out, you can press G to grab. That's going to move the camera around. But then to move the camera back and forth, I can double tap the Z key. Then I can bring the camera back or bring it closer. I'm just going to move the camera and maybe just like stick it there. And also I do have a tutorial specifically on how to use the Blender camera where I go over more navigation and more settings. If you'd like to check out that tutorial on how to use Blender's camera, I'll have the link in the description. So I'm just going to place the camera right there, and then I can also click on this button right here to hide the overlays. And check that out. So we now have this really cool robot. So I'm going to press Ctrl S to save, and then I just want to give this a render, and then I'm also going to pose the robot and give it another render. So to render the image, you can press F12, that will render the image. And because I'm using Blender Eevee, it shouldn't take very long, so my computer rendered it in just about 2.5 seconds. Now you could do some compositing to this render if you wanted to, and I also have a tutorial specifically on how to do compositing in Blender. Link is in the description if you'd like to check that out, but I like how this render looks. I think it looks nice. So to save this image, I'm going to click right here on Image, and then you can click on Save As. And I'm just going to save this as Robot Mech Final Render, and I can just save this as a PNG file. So I'll just click on Save As. Alright, so I'm going to press Ctrl S to save. I can press the Escape key, and that's going to go back to the 3D space. So I'm now going to click on this button right here just to show the overlays again, and I want to click on the rig. And I'm just going to make a nice little pose for the robot. So I'm going to press Control Tab. That's going to take me into pose mode, and I can select this bone right here. I'll press R to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it on the Z axis. Maybe also press G to grab, and then I can hit Shift Z after I press G to grab, and that's just going to move the robot back and forth, but not on the Z axis, and I can just kind of rotate the robot over. I'm going to select the body bone and just rotate this down, and then I can select the neck bone, and I'm going to rotate this over, and then I can select the head bone and kind of rotate it up so the robot is kind of looking upwards. Maybe rotate this over. Then I can also select these bones here for the hips, maybe just kind of rotate the hips out a little bit. That might be pretty cool. And then I could also just like move the foot back and then maybe move this foot forward a little bit. And I actually want to move the camera, so I'm going to like move my view right down here, and then I can press Control Alt Numpad 0. That's going to bring the camera to where I am. And then I'm going to press Control Tab to go back to object mode. I can click right here to select the camera, and I can press G to grab, and then double tap the Z key and just kind of bring this out. So I'm just going to continue to play around with the pose and get something cool to render the robot. Alright, so I've been playing around with the pose of the robot, and this is something that I really like. I like how this pose is. So I just kind of made the robot like looking up. So I'm just going to press F12 again and give this a final render. So I'm going to save this image again. So I'll click on image and then I'll click on save as. And I'll just save this as Robot Mech Final Render 2, and then I can click on save as. Alright, let's press Ctrl S again to save. I'm going to hit the escape key to go back to the 3D space, and now we are going to animate the robot. So I'm going to start off by selecting the rig, and then I'm going to press Control Tab to go to edit mode. I'm going to press the A key to select everything, and I'm going to press Alt R, Alt G, and Alt S just to bring the robot back to his default pose. And then I can press Control Tab to go to object mode. Let's hold down the Z button and go into the solid view. Now to be able to animate this better, I don't really want to see the lights. So I'm going to click on this drop down right here to show the overlays. And I want to just uncheck the extra. That way we're not going to be able to see the lights. And then I'm going to bring up the timeline right here. So I'm going to be doing a walk cycle, and the walk cycle is going to be looping. So the very ending of the walk cycle will be the same as the very starting, and so we can loop the animation. So I'm going to go right here to the end frame, and I'm going to change the end frame to 59 and then hit enter. So I'm going to have a total of 59 frames, and then the last keyframe is going to be at frame 60, and that is going to be the same pose as the first frame, which will be at frame 1. And then we are going to end it at frame 59, and that way, right when it hits frame 60, it's actually going to go back to frame 1, and that will make it a looping animation. And also, I am using the default of 24 frames per second. So if you go here to the output properties on the frame rate, I'm going to use 24 frames per second. That's very standard for animation, so that'll work fine. So I am now going to go to frame 1. So you can click and drag and just make sure you set that blue line there to frame 1. Now I want Blender to add keyframes as we move the bones. So to do this, I'm going to click on this button right here, and this is the auto key. So this way, whenever we move the bones, it's automatically going to add a keyframe. So I'm going to select the armature, and then I'm going to press Control Tab to go to edit mode. And then I can press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and I'm going to create the first pose on frame 1. So for this first pose, I'm going to click right here and select the leg, G to grab, and I'm going to bring this over and just stick that right there. And then I can select this leg and G to grab, click with my mouse wheel, and I'm going to bring that back. And then I want to bring the whole thing up, so I'm going to first select this bone. I can press G and Z, and I'm going to bring that up a bit, place it there. And then I can also select this bone, shift and select this bone, and I can press G and Z to bring that down. And I'm just going to stick it right there on the floor. Maybe bring it down a little bit farther, and then I can select the main bone here and bring everything up. And you can see right here on the timeline, there's that little yellow diamond, and that is a keyframe there on the timeline. So it's the keyframes that we're adding. So because we have the auto key on, every time we move the bone, it's automatically going to add a keyframe. Now I also want to rotate the robot's head forward a little bit. So I'm going to select the body bone, press R to rotate, and I'm just going to rotate this down a little bit. And then I also want to select the head and kind of rotate the head up so he's looking straight forward. So this is going to be it for the first pose of the robot. Now I want the robot to be at this exact same pose at frame 60, because then when it hits frame 60, it's going to go back to frame 1, and that way it'll be a looping animation. So press the A key to make sure you have all of the bones selected, and I actually want to make sure all of these bones have keyframes right here, because some of the bones we didn't move. So I am going to press the I key, and then we can insert keyframes, and I'm going to add location, rotation, and scale. And this way all of the bones now have a keyframe on frame 1. So I'm now going to click up here, and I'm going to drag over to frame 60, and then press the A key in the timeline to make sure you select the keyframes. I'm now going to press Shift D to duplicate, and I'm going to bring the keyframes over and drop it there at frame 60. So you can see there's this little orange or yellow line, and that is telling us that nothing is changing between the two keyframes, and that is what I want. So I'm now going to click and drag right up here, and I'm going to go to frame 30. You can also change this to frame 30. So frame 30 is in the very middle of the animation. And so in the very middle, I want to flip everything so that instead of this leg being out here, I want this leg to be over here, and then this other leg is going to be back, because we're just animating a looping walk cycle of him walking. So what I'm going to do is select this bone right here, and I want to duplicate this bone's location to this bone. So press the A key to deselect everything. I'm going to press B for the box select, and I'm just going to box select the last keyframe here at frame 60. I'm now going to press Control C, and that is going to copy that keyframe. And then I can click on this leg here, the left leg, and then I'm going to move my mouse down here and press Control V, and that is going to paste that keyframe right there at frame 30. So you can now see that this leg has been moved over to the same location. So now what I want to do is move back to frame 1 and just make sure you have this one selected. So this is the left side. And I want to press A to deselect everything. I'll press B for the box select. And I'm just going to box select that keyframe there on frame 1. So I can press Control C, that is going to copy it. And then I can click right here on the foot right. And then again, go back to frame 30, and I want to bring that foot back. So then I can press Control V with my mouse hovered in the timeline, and that's going to paste that keyframe on that bone. So now I can drag back and forth, and you can see that the robot is kind of shuffling along. All right, and it is a looping animation. If you press the space bar or click on the play button, you can see that is definitely a looping animation. It looks exactly the same. And so now what we need to do is just add more keyframes in the middle to kind of make the robot's head bob and kind of make his body bob around, kind of up and down, and we'll also make the feet move up. So I'm going to bring this over to frame 15 because frame 15 is between 1 and 30. And then I can press 3 on the numpad for side view, and I can zoom in here. So I want to start by moving the robot up because he's going to be taking a step forward, so he's going to be moved up. So I'm going to select this one here. This is the main controller. I can press G and Z, and we're going to bring that up just a little. Then I can select this foot right here, and this foot is the one which is in front, so it's the right foot. I'll press 3 for side view. I can press G to grab, and I'm going to stick this foot right down there. So put it down there on the ground. Then I'm going to select the back foot, and I'm going to press G to grab, and I'm going to bring this up. And I also want to rotate it over because he's going to be stepping forward. And also I want to select this foot bone right here. So select that foot bone, and then press R to rotate. And I'm going to rotate this around and kind of move that over a little bit. Now when he's stepping over, I also want his body to rotate back a little bit. So I'm going to select the body, press R to rotate, kind of rotate that up, and then I want his head to kind of rotate down so he's always looking forward. So I'm going to select the head and press R to rotate. And again, we are doing this all on frame 15. So now I can play through this by pressing the space bar. You can see the walk cycle is a little bit weird. He does take a step here, but then the step just kind of turns into a shuffle again. And so I want to do the same exact thing right here, but over here at frame 45. So I want to do the same thing that I did at frame 15, but I want to just mirror it so it's the opposite way around. So what I'm going to do is just select this bone right here, the foot left, and then press the A key to deselect everything in the timeline. I can press B for the box select and just box select those keyframes, and I'm going to press Control C to copy the keyframes. So I can now click on the foot right, and then I'm going to go right over here to frame 45, and I can press Control V. That is going to paste the keyframes. And then I want to go back to frame 15, and I'm going to do the same thing. So select this foot right here, and then press the A key to deselect everything. B for the box select, and I'm just going to select those keyframes at frame 15. I can press Control C to copy it, and then let's go right over here to frame 45, and I'm going to select this one here. So this is the foot right, the bottom one here, and I can press Control V to paste that. All right, so now that is the same at frame 15 and at frame 45. It's the same for each foot, but it's just on the opposite foot. So now I want to take the keyframes from this foot at frame 15, and I want to duplicate that over to this foot at frame 45. So let's select this one here, the foot ik.r. Again, press A to deselect, B for the box select. We're just going to box select those keyframes right there, and I'm going to press Control C to copy. Then we can click right here on the foot IK left, and we're going to go over to frame 45, and then make sure your mouse is hovered in the timeline, and I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste it. So now you can see it's moved down. And then let's go back to frame 15, and I'm going to select the foot.r, and you can see it's actually rotated a little bit. So I'm going to press 3 on the numpad for side view, and I'm just going to press R to rotate and kind of rotate this up and stick it there. So again, press A to deselect, B for the box select. I'm just going to box select that keyframe here. I can press Ctrl C to copy. Then we're going to go over to frame 45, and I'm going to select this one right here, and I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste that. Now if I go back and forth between frame 1 and frame 15, you can see the whole body moves up, and so I want to do the same thing. So you can see at frame 15 it moves up, so then at frame 45 I want it to be moved up as well. So I'm going to go back to frame 15, and I'm going to select the main controller bone. Press A to deselect. I'm going to press B for the box select. Just box select that keyframe, and I can press Ctrl C to copy. Then I'm going to go right over here to frame 45, and I can press Ctrl V, and that is going to paste it. So now if I play through this, the robot starts down, and then he kind of moves up, then he kind of stays up, and then he goes back down. Now, if I go right here to frame 30, you can see frame 30 is in the very center, and this is where the robot is taking a step. And so I actually want the robot to move back down. So I'm going to go back to frame 1, press the A key to deselect everything in the timeline, make sure you have the main controller bone selected. I'm going to press B for the box select, just box select this keyframe here at frame 1. I can press Ctrl C to copy it. We're going to go right over here to frame 30, and then I can press Ctrl V to paste it. And now you can see that it's moved down. So if I play through this, you can now see the robot goes up and down, and then up and down. And then if I select the head bone, I again want to do the same thing. So if I go right over here to frame 15, you can see that he rotates his head over. And I actually want to rotate that a little bit more down so it's a bit stronger. And then if I go back to frame 1, I'm going to go back to frame 1, I can rotate this over as well. So you can see his head kind of bobs down as it goes from frame 1 to frame 15. So then at frame 30, I want his head to go back down because he moves down. So press A to deselect everything. Make sure you have the head bone selected. I'm going to press B for the box select and just box select the keyframe at frame 1. And then I can use the Ctrl C and the Ctrl V, but instead I could also just press Shift D. Shift D is going to duplicate the keyframe, and I can drop it right there at frame 30. So now if I play through this, you can see he kind of moves up and then moves back down. And then I want the same keyframe at frame 15 to be at frame 45. So you can just select this keyframe here and press Shift D to duplicate it, and we're going to stick it at frame 45. And then I can play through this. And then I want to do the same thing with the body. So I'm going to select the body bone. I'll press A to deselect in the timeline. I'm just going to select the keyframe here. So this one is at frame 1. So I want that same keyframe to be at frame 30. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's put that at frame 30, and then that way if I scrub through this, his body rotates up and then rotates back down. And then again, I want the same one at 15 to be at frame 45. So I can select the one at frame 15, press Shift D to duplicate, and stick it at frame 45. And now I can play through this, and that's starting to look pretty cool. Now, if I go to frame 30, you can see that both of these feet are kind of rotated over at an odd angle, and so I want to fix that. So I'm going to click right here to select this foot, and I want to copy the keyframe from frame 1 at frame 30. So make sure this foot L is selected. I'm going to select this keyframe here at frame 1. I can press Shift D to duplicate it, and I'm going to stick it right there. So now you can see that it's rotated over. And then let's select this one here, so the foot.r, and then I'm going to click on the keyframe at frame 1. I can press Shift D to duplicate this and stick that at frame 30. Alright, so I can play through this, and that is looking better. Now if I play this and zoom in here, you can see that foot actually goes through the ground just a little bit. And if I play back this, you can see at about frame 25, it kind of goes down like that, and then it comes up. So this is actually really easy to fix. I'm just going to go right here to frame 25. And then I'm going to select the foot ik.r. So I now just want to bring it up. So I'm going to press G to grab, bring it up on the Z-axis, and stick it right there. And then if I go 10 frames over from frame 25 to frame 35, you can see a similar thing is happening with this foot. But again, this is really easy to fix, so make sure you're on frame 35, and I'm going to select this bone right here, the foot IK left. I can press G and Z, and I'm just going to bring this up just like that. Alright, so I can play through this, and that is looking much better. Now I do just want to give this animation just a little bit more interest, so what I'm going to do is actually have the neck rotate. Just a little. So I'm going to select the neck bone, and then I am going to go right over here to frame 30 in the very center. So I want to add a keyframe right here just so that the neck stays in the center at frame 30. So I'm going to press the I key, and then I can insert location, rotation, and scale. So there's a keyframe right there in the center, and it's the same as these keyframes. So now at frame 15, I want him to be rotating over his head this way a little bit, and then at frame 45, I want to rotate his head over this way a little bit. So I'm going to go right over here to frame 15 and just make sure you have that neck bone selected. So I'm now going to press R to rotate. Now I want it to rotate the same exact amount over, so the same exact amount this way and the same exact amount this way. So on frame 15, I'm going to hit R to rotate, and then I'm going to type in -17 and enter. So it's rotating over by exactly -17 degrees. And then I can click right here on the timeline, and I'm going to go to frame 45, which is halfway in between 30 and 60. And I'm going to press R to rotate. And then this time I'm just going to type in 17 and then enter. So now if I play through this, his neck's going to rotate just a little bit over, rotate back to the center, and then rotate just a little bit over, and then again go back to the center. Alright, so I can play through the animation and take a look at that, and that's very cool. Now I do see one little problem. It looks like the animation isn't exactly looping, because if I play this right here at the end, you can see the robot's head kind of jolts a little bit, and so this is super easy to fix. So I'm going to press 3 on the numpad for side view, and press the A key to make sure all the bones are selected. So I can just reconfirm that frame 1 and frame 60 are exactly the same. So I'm going to press the A key to deselect all of the keyframes, make sure all the bones are selected, and I can press B for the box select, and I'm just going to drag a box around the keyframes right there at frame 1. I can now press Shift D to duplicate, and I'm going to bring this keyframe all the way over and drop it on frame 60. That is going to override the keyframe because we're putting it on top there. So now I can play through this, and you can see right at frame 60, it's going to jump back to frame 1, and even if you zoom in really close and look really closely, it looks like an exact looping animation. So I'm going to press the 0 on the numpad to go back into the camera view, and I can also press Control Tab to go to pose mode. And let's press Control S to save. And then I want to click on the camera right here, and I actually want to move it. So I'm going to like move the camera maybe to like up here, somewhere right there, and then I can press Control Alt numpad 0. That's going to bring the camera to where we are. And then you can see the camera is actually being moved because we are playing the animation, but we have the auto key on, so it's like jolting the camera around. So what I need to do is just click on this button here to turn the auto key off, and then just press the A key to make sure those are selected, those keyframes, and press X to delete and delete the keyframes. So I'm going to press G to grab, and then G to grab, and double tap the Z key, and I'm just going to bring this out. I can also hold down the Z button and go into the rendered view just to preview that. And now I can just press the G key and just kind of move the camera around and just kind of fit it to the right spot so I can see the entire robot. And I can also click on this button right here to hide the overlays. So the looping animation is now finished. So I can now just render out all of these frames to images, and then we're going to export them together in Blender's video editor to get a final video. So first we need to render out all the frames to images. So I'm going to open up the side panel, and on the file format right here, I'm going to click on PNG, and I'm instead going to change this to JPEG. This way the file size will be a little bit smaller, but it will still keep the same quality. The quality will be a tiny bit lower, but it's going to be very hard to notice. And also on the quality right here on the JPEG, I'm going to turn that up to 100. So now we need to set an output to render out all the frames too. So I'm going to click on the file icon right here. And then I just created a new folder, and I called this rendered frames. So to create a new folder, you can click on the plus icon right there, and then you can just rename the folder. So I'm going to go inside the rendered frames folder, and then I can just click on the accept button. Alright, so then really important, press Control S to save the Blender file before you actually render out the frames. And then I'm going to press Ctrl F12 and that is going to render the animation. And I will come back to this when it is finished. Alright, and the render is now finished. So my computer rendered out all the frames, and it didn't take very long. My computer rendered out each frame in just about 2 seconds, so that didn't take very long at all. But your computer might take longer. It will depend on how powerful your computer is. So I'm going to press Ctrl S to save this file. So press Ctrl S to save, and then I'm going to open up a new Blender file to do the video editing. So I'm going to click on File, and then I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to go right down here and open up a video editing layout. So right here in the sequencer, I'm going to press Shift A. Shift A will bring up the Add menu, and I'm going to click on Image/Sequence. And Blender's file browser will appear, and you just need to locate to the folder where you've rendered out the frames. Now right now, if I add this in, it's actually going to play backwards because you can see this is at frame 59 and then it goes down. So I'm going to click right here on this little arrow to show the display settings, and I want to click on reverse sorting, and that is going to flip it. So now if I click away from this, you can see it starts at frame 1 and then I can scroll down and it goes all the way to the end. So I'm going to press the A key. That's going to select all the frames, and I can click on Add Image Strip. And then if you select the strip, you can click right here on Strip, and I'm going to go right down here and click on Set Render Size, and that way it's going to set the render size to whatever you rendered the frames as. And then also make sure you set the frame rate right here to the correct frame rate, and I just used the default frame rate of 24 frames per second. So I can now press the space bar, and that is going to play the animation. So then if you want to loop it, you can select the strip right here, and you can press Shift D to duplicate it and drop it here, and then Shift D to duplicate it and drop it here, and you can continue to just duplicate them, and as you can see, it is looping. So I'm just going to duplicate these images here until there are 5, and then I also want to set the end frame, so I can click and drag right here at this end frame, and I'm going to move this over. I can also scroll with my mouse wheel to zoom in, and I can also click with the middle mouse wheel to kind of zoom in here and kind of move around, and I'm going to set the end frame to right here. So my end frame is 295, and that is because I duplicated this entire thing 5 times. Now I want to save this Blender file, so I can click on File and I can click on Save As. And I'm just going to save this as videoedit.blend, and I will click on Save As. Now, as I talked about in part 1 of the tutorial series, I am going to be adding a sound effect of the robot's legs walking. If you want to use the same sound effect that I'm using, I will have the link in the description. It's a free sound effect from a website called freesound.org. So again, link is in the description if you'd like to download it. So I have my file browser right over here on another monitor. So I'm just going to click and drag and drop the audio file into Blender's video editor. And then I can press G to grab, and I can move this up here, and I'm just going to stick it here, and I want to see the waveforms, so I'm going to click on this display waveform. If you press the N key, that's going to open up the side panel, and click on the display waveforms. So now I can play through this and listen to the sound effect. So I now just want to move the sound effect around and fit it to the robot's legs walking. So I'm just going to play through this and listen to the first step. Alright, so the first robot step kind of ends about there. So then with this strip selected, I can press the K button, and that is going to cut the strip. And then I just want to play it, and I just want to match it up. So I want to match the timing up with him walking. And then I want to go to the next one, and I'm going to press K to cut that, and then I can just kind of move the strip around and match it up to him walking. Let's go to the next one here. I think this one ends there, so I'm going to press K to cut this. Let's go back here and just play this. Really, it's just about looking at the legs walking and then just getting the timing right of the sound effect. Now, because this is a looping animation, I actually just need to set up the sound effects for one loop of the walking, so just to there, and then I can just duplicate the sound effects. Alright, so I've just played around with the timing of the sound effects, and this is what I like. So I think that sounds pretty good. So now I can just select all of these strips right here. I can press B for the box select, just select the audio strips, and then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and we can just stick that right there. And I want to just put the starting of this sound effect right there at the starting, and then I can just play through that. And then what I can do is actually just like box select these strips right here, and I can just delete them by hitting X. Then I can press B for the box select, just box select all of these because these are looping, and I can press Shift D to duplicate, drop it there, and Shift D to duplicate and drop it there. And so now the sound effect is going to loop as well with the video. And to make sure that it loops, I'm also going to press B for the box select, just box select one of those loops, and I can press Shift D to duplicate and stick it here as well, because there is a little bit of the sound effect ending at the starting. Alright, so there we go. So now it is a looping video with looping audio as well. So I'm now going to render this out to a final video. So I'm going to scroll down here to the output, and I can click on this file icon to set an output. And I'll just save this as final video in the folder with my files and click on accept. Now, right here on the file format, I like to use the file format of FFmpeg video, and then I'm going to click on this encoding here, open up the encoding. I like to use a container of MPEG-4, and I like to use a video codec of H.264, and I just leave this at medium quality and good. And then if you have audio, I like to use the audio codec of AAC. So I can just press Control S again to save, and then to render out this video, I can press Control F12. Or you can also click right here on Render, and you can click on Render Animation. Alright, and that is it. So this is going to wrap up the final part of this 10-part tutorial series on how to create this Sci-Fi Mech robot in Blender. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial series, and thank you so much for watching. And if you followed the entire tutorial series, let me know in the comments. You can also leave a robot emoji in the comments to let me know you did the entire tutorial series. And I am trying to create Blender tutorials and Blender content for a living, so if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then I will have links in the description to my Gumroad store and my Patreon page and the YouTube memberships. Those are all great ways to help support me and this channel so I can keep on making Blender tutorials. And you can also purchase the project files for this tutorial series on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, links in the description, and that's a great way to help support me as well. And I'd love to see your final result, so if you post your finished animation on YouTube, you can definitely let me know. Just let me know and I can check it out on your channel. And sometimes YouTube doesn't like links in the comments, sometimes it will hide the comments, so you can also just let me know where you've posted your artwork online and I'll look it up. I'd love to see all of your results. And if you'd like to learn how to create more robots in Blender, then I have 2 other robot tutorial series on my YouTube channel. So I have this tutorial on how to create this sci-fi robot drone, and then also this tutorial series here on how to create this sci-fi worker robot. Links are in the description if you'd like to check out those tutorials. But again, thank you so much for watching this tutorial series. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it useful, and I hope to see you in a future tutorial.